Education Department wants to make history a compulsory subject up to matric. The announcement comes after the Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga, called for syllabuses to include more South African history. We're now joined by the Director of Communications for the Department of Basic Education, Elijah Mhlanga. Good evening, sir. Thanks very much for coming through. What actually prompted this in the first place? I mean, in fact, even the setting up of the task team that then did all these comparative studies.
Well, there were stakeholders in the basic education sector who made representations to the minister, and one of the notable ones is the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, who made a very strong case to the minister, who in July 2014 announced her intention in a budget vote speech to look into this matter. And in the year that followed, the task team was appointed with terms of reference having been compiled.
Now, we know that something like this raises all manner of issues. Among those issues is, of course, the ability of teachers to teach, even though it's something that should apply to virtually all subjects. But history in particular, given our experiences, where it's just been dismissed as a subject that teaches events and when they happened. So how are you empowering your teachers?
Yeah, in fact, the task team has captured that quite nicely in their report. They do say that the focus on teacher development will have to be given attention. They say that there will have to be continuing professional teacher development, but also training before the teachers can start teaching, which means we need to make sure that the teachers who will be teaching this subject, now that it's going to be compulsory, if everything goes according to plan, will have to be appropriately trained and suitably qualified. So that's one thing that has made this particular issue to be one that will be approached in phases rather than to do it overnight, because there are certain things that we need to do in preparation for full implementation.
Now, there's also, of course, issues of, there can actually be many versions, of history. History often gets told from a particular vantage point. And if we take our own example, will it mean, for example, that the ANC narrative, of what happened, in our country, will that be the dominant narrative, as has been the criticism, for example, of how history has been taught by and large, across the fence in one of the neighboring countries?
Not really. The point is not to fix one mistake by making another. It's rather to correct that which is wrong. And the academics have been very useful in going around the country, consulting people through roundtable engagements, getting inputs from all sorts of people who are interested on the matter, some specialists. So all those views, when revising the content, will be taken into account. The idea is not to tell one person's story or one grouping story, but to tell a story that will represent all of us as South Africans, not one which will show victors and others being victims of a situation. It cannot be like that. Those are the things that we want to fix. It's not really about having one story dominating. I mean, the study that they did in the 14 countries in Africa and elsewhere which were studied, they do pick up some of those mistakes that were made, and they say we shouldn't be going that route because it could have a disastrous outcome.
And you're confident that come 2023, you will be able to begin with the implementation? Absolutely, because systems are in place.
Yeah, because the subject is there, is in the system. All that we need to do is to conduct an audit. In fact, they've done that because it was part of their terms of references. And we just need to make sure that we roll it out in grade 10, 11, and 12. And of course, then go further to understand the implications of making it a compulsory subject. And as you will know, that one of the recommendations is to have paper 1 and 2 at grade 12 level, where you'll have paper 1 focusing on African history and paper 2 on world history, which is something that is not there at the moment. So those are some of the things that we are going to be looking into going forward.
Elijah Mhlanga, thanks very much for coming through this evening.
Thank you.